One.
I graduated.
Good morning, and thank you for joining us for Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated's Omicron Sigma presents Men's Mental Health. I'm here with four professional mental health professionals, including Dr. Jarrod, Dr. Robinson, Dr. Carl Robinson, and Jarrod Gilstrap is a special guest from Dallas Fire, 26-year professional dealing with mental health issues. The goal of today's conversation is to provide insight for friends, family members, and those suffering with mental health issues, particularly for men. The goal is to destigmatize mental health, and to make sure that people believe and understand the importance of accepting mental health as part of their life. I'm going to begin with a brief bio, and we're going to talk with the panelists themselves about what their day-to-day experiences are surrounding mental health. Please join us. To begin with, Dr. Jarrod, congratulations and welcome, brother.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Super excited to have you as a panelist. Tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in the mental health space?
Close to 20 years.
Wow. Now, what led you into mental health as a profession?
Great question. I think, I love the Bible when it says that God is the God who comforts us. So we in turn, we comfort others. So growing up as a child, I had my own issues. My family had some dysfunction. My grandfather was alcoholic. So, that I gravitated towards psychology and counseling courses. So I was on a different path. Once I realized that this path was something that really intrigued me, and it was more of my own personal development, and led me into the counseling growth. I became a master's in marriage and family counseling, licensed professional counseling supervisor, and created my own therapy called transformational speech therapy.
That's right. And you actually operate a website that shares information on the program that you developed as well.
Correct.
It's fantastic. Dr. J. Robinson is joining us as well.
Glad to be here.
We're super glad to have you. As a quick aside, Dr. Robinson and I began chatting as I was reaching out for panelists, and randomly, he shared that his father, Dr. Carl Robinson, is also a mental health professional. So by way of presenting, we have a father and son PhDs in the mental health space joining us this morning. We're super excited to have you. Dr. J, is it possible that you might have taken some inspiration from your father? Is that possible?
Absolutely. I credit 100% of the work that I'm doing now to him, and being his study and understanding how much he's helped people with different challenges, talking people down. So it was just being at the right place and at the right time, not knowing this was something I was going to do. So.
And you both operate the Greater Dallas LifeSkills Center, which focuses on group therapy. Tell us a little bit about that.
Okay, great. So we found out that most of our challenges that people seem to have was looking at singular approaches to those sets of issues, and kind of barreling through the traditional models of counseling, which have kind of led down to much deeper separations, more issues, more anxieties, more just added things that we found out that if we were to center on individuals figuring out what the root causes were, but doing it so in a group dynamic, because oftentimes we see the challenges as just being ours. And what we do is we put people in a room that may be going through the same similar challenges. And what they're able to do in that environment is to be able to learn the same things, learn the same principles, learn the same valuable skill sets to walk them back into their genres differently. And people have been able to be in the same rooms and have benefited from just being there and say, hey, I have a problem with my son, or I have a son. Well, just so happens you have a 12-year-old that's in there that's like, if you want your son to do this, this is what you say to him. So we have the group dynamic, which has fostered much more trust and more success in terms of the people that have been there.
We're going to talk about the importance of isolation and understanding that you're not alone as part of the healing process that you're in a conversation as we go a little bit deeper. But I'd like to privilege Officer Gilstrap, a 26-year professional on the front lines with Dallas Fire, doing the work each and every day. So I'm comfortable saying let's give him a round of applause. That commitment to our community, this man has been on the front lines. Could you please share a little bit about your background and your work?
Yes, again,
26 years a veteran of the Dallas Fire Department. I appreciate the acknowledgement. You know, I've always had a desire to help people. Even as a young kid, I knew something I wanted to do in regards to the community I lived in. And so it's going to be that or police officer. Actually, I applied for Dallas Fire and Dallas Police. And the fire department called me first. And then when I was in the academy, the police department called me. And I was like, man, I'm still young. Let me finish this, get this going before I decide to go over there, because I might get fired from home. and so about 10 years ago, probably 11 now, I was approached by one of our chiefs to come down to our EMS division and then work in a program.
Sorry, EMS?
EMS, Emergency Medical Service.
Thank you.
Right, and so it's basically where all of our medical directors are, all of our what we call protocols, everything that our guidelines to what we do on the ambulance. And so going down there, he wanted to start a whole new field. It was called community paramedicine. Within community paramedicine, we had this the mental health part that was in community paramedicine. And so from there, that's kind of where I got my foot in the door as far as working with mental health. And from there, we started a program called RIGHT-CARE, which stands for Rapid Integrated Group Healthcare Team.
Would you say that one more time with louder?
Yes, it's called RIGHT-CARE. It stands for Rapid Integrated Group Healthcare Team. It took me a while. And so, so from there, we answer EMS calls on the police side. We answer, get that right, we answer mental health calls on the police side. So when you call 911 and you have a mental health emergency, a group goes out, which consists of a police officer, paramedic, firefighter, and a Parkland social worker. And then we go in that car and we go answer that call to help people. And I'm a big advocate of less violence from us, more therapy for the patient, more of the ability to take them to a facility to receive help. And, you know, we have a thing called less lethal, which is, for lack of a better term, looks like a little shotgun, but it has rubber bullets in it. And I love that because real bullets hurt. Those bullets hurt, they don't kill you. And if we could just get that person to they can get assistance without letting a mental health emergency cause them to lose their life. And I see this so often in different cities and states. And I'm proud that Dallas has done that. We carry that type of weapon. And it's a perfect name. It's Leslie.
Well, I think the real value is in the approach. The intent is to de-escalate. The intent is to provide the right response to what is a mental health crisis. This is not someone continuing to do harm to others. This is not somebody who's in their right frame of mind. I apologize for using right like that twice. If the intent is to provide the right level of care, the right response, then everybody's on board. You said that you're partnering with law enforcement as well as social services and fire response. So you have the ability to respond to physical trauma, some sort of, I hate to say criminal behavior, but the potential for violence or criminal behavior, and to identify and diagnose what the condition is. So it sounds like you have all of the resources necessary to respond. How does it feel having that level of support when you go out to a scene and you don't know what you're expecting?
Well, I mean, that's my whole career.
Yeah.
My whole career is going out not knowing what I'm going to run into. So at this point in time, that's the normal for me. But we do limit ourselves on certain calls. We don't go out on shootings, we don't go out on stabbings, because we're not part of that component.
Yes.
We're part of, we get mental health calls, so when the call goes down to our call center, we only get a certain group, but that consists of a person with a history of mental health, or a person who's having a mental health crisis, or family members calling saying, my son is, I think, is depressed, or he wants to commit suicide or something like that. Then we go out and we dig deeper once we get on the scene. To either take that person to a facility or to see if he's okay or stable enough to go to an appointment that may be tomorrow.
We were discussing earlier offline, and I apologize for sort of digressing a bit, about the difference between calling 911 versus calling 311. Those are two totally different things.
That's correct.
Can we sort of, before I get into Dr. Robinson Sr., can we talk a little bit about the difference between those lines and what the response is when you make those calls?
So the response when you call 911 is to get fire and EMS there right away. You because you fear for your life or you think it's a safety issue. Okay? I don't want to put someone to call 311 when it's a true emergency. When you're calling 311, that would be to talk about to get some type of services, maybe to get a counselor, to get mental health services or whatnot down the road. So you're just inquiring. It's 311 is has a vast array of services. And so it's like for information. Well, 911 is we're coming lights and sirens. We're going to come out. We're going to assist you in any way possible to mitigate that emergency.
And so the difference really is in the resources that were available to responders and the nature of the response to the situation.
Yeah, you said it in the last statement, the nature of the response or the situation that you may have. Because if I feel like I'm going to kill myself, then we need to get there right away.
Sure.
We need to get there right away. We need to get you the help and the services that you need to make sure that your life is safe.
Yes.
Versus, I feel like I'm depressed. I don't feel like I want to hurt myself, but I feel like I need some services. So let me call and see if I can get some of those services as well.
All right, so critically important for the community to understand 911 for immediate emergencies where there's the potential where the actual physical violence is an issue versus 311 if you simply need assistance and support, perhaps identifying resources that are available for someone who might be experiencing trauma or some sort of crisis. All right, we're going to return to that in a moment. I'll save the best for last, gentlemen. I'll put a slide over yourself. But it was my privilege to identify Dr. Carl Robinson, one of our community's senior mental health professionals. I was honored and privileged to engage your son first, and then after speaking with you, couldn't help but invite you to participate in the discussion and keep welcoming. Can you talk to us a little bit about your background and experience? I know we both have a connection with home Arkansas. We just discovered that a little bit. Dr. Robinson is also originally from Wisconsin. What led you to Dallas and what led you to a career in mental health?
But actually, I was straight out of the military, and I came to work for a company called then General Electric. Jarrod was trained, but I was ex-military, special forces. But I got into counseling actually when I was in high school. I used to counsel a lot of girls about boyfriends. So the counseling thing really set in early before license. But I got out of just individual counseling because I got tired of hearing people yell at each other. It's done it that way. They think it's running around the couch. And that's part of what my book is about. It's the only anger management piece that's out there that tells you how anger management classes work. So anger is just a buzzword. There's a lot of other things underneath that. Anger is just your byproduct.
Yes.
But so we came up with a way over 12 years to help people in a group setting deal with those issues that predispose them to anger.
Yes.
So anger is not an issue. I've never seen anger walk up behind someone, slap them back and hit it, turn around and say, "Get that anger." No, behavior.
So, father.
That's right.
Just in a bit of an aside, how long have you operated Greater Dallas LifeSkills Center? What led you to the formation of that?
About 18 years. It's strange that you can say that. My wife said she could really tell you about it.
Wow.
We were broke in both pockets. No, nothing. We had nothing.
Yes.
I remember having the police come up behind me and have an issue, and I just sit there and beat on my steering wheel. I said, I can't get a break. I'm sitting at the steering wheel, in Plano, Texas, beating on my steering wheel. And because the cop pulled up behind me, it's crap, So I'm beating on the steering wheel, and when I get to have my history, I look up and everybody's gone. I'm on one sitting at the light. So I think that to be a sign I should be here. So what happened was, my youngest son passed away in 2004. He died in my arms, and I had to find a way to reinvent myself. And because I was thinking, the first thing that happens when you lose someone is you go through the blank check. Could have, would have, should have, I did that. You couldn't do anything. And a friend of mine, David Weinbaum, who was a third generation diamond dealer back in New York and also a New York professor, hit me up and said, "Carl, I heard about it." He said, "Let me tell you something." He said, "I'm sure you were the best father that you could be every day." And that really helped me. So, okay, so if I was the best, so how do I become the best? So I had to look at myself. What's my belief system? Who am I now? And I'm looking at a son who's looking at his brother simply dead. I'm looking at a wife who's lost her baby. I'm looking at a sister who lost their twin. Who am I now? Who are we? So I had to go back and redefine who they were and who I am. And I come up with cognitive behavioral retraining. I started using it in classes. And we've seen probably 14,000 people for the last years.
I'm sorry, can you say that one more time? How many people?
Probably 14, somewhere around 14,000 people.
Thousand of those
People over that 17,
have
yeah.
helped get rated out.
Yeah, and they come, yeah, look, they come through the court systems, they come through probation, and they also come through, wives, sometimes wife order and prevention.
Don't get any ideas. I love
You
the
know,
spouses.
yeah.
Don't get any ideas. We're going to pivot to some of the questions. We're going to come back because obviously we don't want to delve a little bit deeper on that. But we're going to begin with our questions. And the format for those that are joining us online is this is a panel discussion. We're going to be going through a series of questions. All of the panelists are going to share their thoughts on the given topics, and we're just going to kind of respond to one another and share and agree. I think this might be a good point since we've reached, we're going to enter the questions for a brief break. Thank you for those of us who have joined. We're going to take a few moments just to kind of reset. We'll be right back with you. Thank you. morning, and we're back. Thank you for joining us for 5 Days of Fraternity on Single Chapters Men's Mental Health. I'm here with Dr. Diversion, Dr. Jay Robinson, Officer Jarrod Gilstrap, and Dr. Carl Robinson to discuss the state of mental health, with an emphasis on resources and destigmatizing mental health here in North Texas and elsewhere. We've begun with our intros. I'd like to begin at this point with moving into some of our questions. And I'm going to start with a super broad question, and one which is sort of wide open. So, what is mental health? And I'm going to start with Dr. Earl. What is mental health?
Is that process mental health? It is when your mind is able to properly function and assess the million bits of information coming at you. So you're able to utilize your cognition and your reasoning. Basically, to be able to be rational. If I had to break it down, I look at mental health like on a spectrum. So I'm looking at there's mental wellness, then on the other side of the spectrum is mental disorders. And in the middle, there's mental stability, and then there's mental instability.
That's a good way of looking at it. Sort of as a spectrum with these two extremes, and then we're all sort of somewhere along that spectrum.
I love that you say that because all of us are not at 100%. We're operating about 75 to 80% of, as it relates to stability. You just want to be able to function and be able to reason most of life.
Same question to you, Dr.
No, that's a great question. I love what you just said there. There are three components. I look at the emotional, I look at the social, I look at the psychological. All three of those make the facets of mental health. So those are the things that determine how you think, what you feel, what you experience. So when you wrap all of that, and that's a component, you have mental health. How we stigmatize it is that what we're doing now, we're doing the social part, which is coming together to have a discussion. The psychological part is about the information. What can you do? What are the resources? What are the things that you can do? What is the emotional aspect? It is about common ground. It's about camaraderie. It's about finding the support and the social network that will be able to help you to navigate through what you're going through. So that's what I look at in the mindset.
It's interesting. So, not a spectrum the same way, but more of sort of a holistic, more like a circle.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We're going to come back to that because I want to touch on the social aspect of mental health. We've all kind of dabbled around it, but I think it's more critical that we understand it's not something that you're experiencing individually. It's part of the framework that includes your family and others. Officer Gilstrap, what are your thoughts on mental health? How would you describe it?
Well, I would describe mental health as the ability to do activities of daily living, and not necessarily do them well, but just to be able to function and do the basic activities of daily living. In addition to whether that's engaging with friends and family, whether it's wanting to, having the desire to go to the gym and to physically take care of your body, do puzzles, do those things that keep your mind and body physically active and in shape. So, lastly, I would like to think of it as working out or working out your mind. So, if you work out in the gym, then you need to work out doing puzzles, doing studying, reading, increasing your vocabulary, doing things that keep your mind churning. And that's the whole aspect, I think, of mental health. But I kind of defined it, kind of described it.
No, and one of the points that we're going to talk about a little bit later is the role of physical activity and daily routine, working out, talking with friends and family, going for a walk, getting out in the sunshine. I know a lot of us during the pandemic, we're stuck inside. Many of us didn't feel comfortable going outside. And you can begin to feel depressed simply because you're off your routine. You're not doing the sorts of things that you normally make yourself feel better. So we're going to come back to that a little bit more deeply. Thank you for that. Dr. Carl Robinson.
I really appreciate the answer that you gave. This touches such a broad spectrum from different areas of life that we all deal with. And I think coming together on this panel and talking about these things at this level really gives a lot of broad-based information and to understand to make choices. I look at something called pop psychology. When you think about pop psychology, it's just whatever the norm is out there is the norm. So our normal is actually abnormal. We're in a post-pandemic era where we weren't, as a nation, healthy mentally before we went in. There's no way we could be healthy coming out. So now we've got to deal with the real dysfunctions because we went through dysfunctional time. And when you go through dysfunction, it's hard to be functional. You got to almost get dysfunctional. It's kind of like, in order to catch the bad guy, you got to have a little bad guy in you, to catch it. So I think psychological resilience, being able to handle mental issues without outside stimuli, like drinking or drugs, denotes good mental health. But the difference between mental health and behavioral health is starting to do this. And that's a problem because behavioral health is always the byproduct of mental health. But behavioral health in our communities, on a continual basis, people conduct themselves a certain way. All of a sudden, we find ourselves functioning in bad mental.
I'd like to follow up, if I may. You mentioned national trauma. You mentioned that we went through a season, a crisis as a nation, in fact, globally. What are your thoughts, gentlemen, on the role of the pandemic in impacting mental health? And let's go reverse order. Officer Gilstrap, did you see an increase in mental health crises?
Yes, it did. Actually, there was an increase in family violence where we're getting 911 calls on a daily basis because people were confined to their homes or apartments or wherever they lived, and they weren't used to that. It was abnormal. So kids were used to going to school, parents were used to the kids going to school. Everybody was used to getting out of their home. And so you cause people to stay inside, and it's like your proverbial getting on my nerves. You know what I mean? We need some space. Well, I don't have any space. So then you had family violence, and an uptick in that. You had people starting to lose some of their norms, and their mental health stability was being lost. And so then you couldn't really go on a regular basis. You had to get treated via telehealth. So it was really tough for a period of time there. And so people found ways to adjust. And almost toward the end of the pandemic, people were starting to adjust and start figuring out ways to get help. But it was a crazy period.
Dr. J, what are your thoughts?
One thing I can say, definitely to this point, is that we definitely did see an increase of the number of clients that we were seeing because of the challenges of now family stuff that was surfaced because you had people that were going to school, going to work, and so issues were never really unfolding until they were combined. So we had that, and we saw families that were coming in trying to get, deal with the challenges of the marriages that they didn't know they had challenges with before, and so much came to light because of COVID. And the resource aspect was we were doing group sessions, and most of our stuff was in person. We had to do a transition to go directly online, which was in a very broad space, which we've never done before. And we had to figure out ways like how we still going to be effective at helping people even if they can't physically see us. And so we had to give people the same level of comfort and to let them know that even though we're not in a group setting, at least you can see me, you can hear me, you can talk to me, and you still have other people that are in the room with you that have same challenges. So you're not isolated. So we still have to provide the same environment.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of us became a lot more comfortable in operating in virtual spaces. Although I will again say it's not the same as in person.
It's very true.
But it's better than nothing. Dr. Rowe, your thoughts on it?
I agree with Dr. Robinson. On a large level, I think that the pandemic just highlighted the problems that really were covered. It's like the cockroaches are in our families and in our houses, but we just don't see them. The pandemic caused them something to come out and grow. And to me, I think so you want, from my perspective, you will have people in the pandemic who thrived, who actually did well as a family. They were closer together because they had some things already really working well. For those families that were dysfunctional and have a lot of mental issues and things, it highlighted and caused it to become even intense, where you have all of the issues that arose from it. And I think at the heart of the pandemic, for me, we really saw the impact of isolation. right? So isolation affects depression, anxiety. It has just a domino effect on our emotional and mental well-being.
So it's good for all of them.
Oh, absolutely. Literally the first 5 or 6 months or so, and probably can attest to it. In the first 5 or 6 months, most of our clients were calling and asking what we do in classes in person, because they did not see themselves operating and doing these in a virtual space. Like, can I come in? It's like, we would love to be able to do it. I'm sorry, we can't. So we had to navigate the space, and most of the people that we saw during those first 6 months, it was fights for COVID, and whether to get the shot or not, or somebody fight over food, or did you go to the grocery, like the most minute stuff that under any normal circumstance would just be swept under the rug.
Yes.
COVID just like intensified it, and now brought through the court systems, and now made an issue, and law enforcement is now involved. So we definitely saw big intensity on those very small issues. People who really had individual issues that were now brought out in the family unit collective.
There's an interesting duality that you describe being at home, being in your apartment, being in a space where you're surrounded by family and yet feeling more isolated. What is the role of isolation in mental health? How does it contribute to a person's mental difficulty, challenges that they face in maintaining? Why should it matter? I don't really like my family anyway. I love you. That's not what I literally am saying, what is the role of feeling isolated in impacting the mental health?
It definitely does, because your own particular truth is not your own version of the truth. It's your own existence of what's really happening with you. I think in the case of men feel isolated, but women don't know. You know, you don't have that else to give. You don't pay bills, you know, weather the storm, you done everything you're supposed to do. You just want the big piece of chicken, right?
Right.
Okay, so he can't get the big piece of chicken. So what happens in a lot of cases is that men sometimes don't feel respected in their own circle. That's an isolation. That's silent. And the statistics are now black and brown men, so it's difficult to know what the true plight is of the black man, because they've convoluted it. You see, so the statistics are not correct. But when a man he can isolate himself and still be in the home. He can still be functioning, but not functioning here. Because what he has now, since he's not accepted in the version he wants to be, now he becomes the version that he can survive in. And now, I'm looking at you and I smile at you, but I don't really like you. I'm looking at you and you funny that you got in my face. You know, he's functioning. Well, why is that so? Whatever. He's disconnected. He's already disconnected. Yeah.
Dr. Jarrod, you said it earlier.
Yeah, I agree with Dr. Robinson as it relates to isolation is a misconception, right? So you could be with your family and still be isolated. So most people don't see that. You think because I'm with family, how can you be isolated? Because I agree that many of us are in a family, but we're not connected, right? Because oftentimes it's deeper than that. Are we comfortable with connections? Do we trust other people?
Right.
A lot of our roots of mistrust comes out in relationships. And so to be able to really connect with somebody is really what we're looking for. It's not about how many people you have around you, and how do you begin to make those intimate connections and have that affection. How do we become emotionally available for each other? And see, that's the real issue I think we have as men. Men, we are accustomed to isolating, right? We do kind of have that macho mentality. And almost in that macho mentality, we instantly draw away from other people. And how do we become humble enough and still keep our manhood to be connected?
think, I had heard a thing the other day, that it's not that men tend to isolate, it's not that they're trying to be watched, but oftentimes they're punished for sharing their vulnerability in the wrong spaces, either with a partner, either with your families, in a workplace setting or something else. When men express vulnerability, it is often punished. And so can we talk a little bit about how the challenges of vulnerability can contribute to poor mental health? Can we talk about that?
I'd like to give you an example, kind of think back what everybody's talked about is I would see a lot of things at work, right? I would go out and I would see patients and I would see something very traumatic. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to get that out. You want to share it with somebody because we're designed to talk to each other, to communicate, and that's normal. So when you isolate yourself, you can get bouts of depression, you can feel a lot of things come up, okay? But when I would go home and I would talk to a significant other and I really couldn't talk to my kids, they were very, very young at the time, she couldn't handle that. And I found myself like, who can I talk to? Because I need to get this out. I just saw a mass shooting and, somebody got decapitated, somebody got burned up in the truck, or there was a ton of things that I was seeing. And as a young man, I'm just a kid. I don't know what's going on. I need to get this out. And so I ended up thinking or going to a counselor and kind of piggyback what you said. I'm macho. I don't want to share it with a counselor. That means I'm weak. What am I doing? And so I learned to, hey, let me sit down, let me get comfortable, let me curse, let me get whatever I need in the way I know how to do it without any limitation to feel better. And so I spread that to the younger guys in the department. I was like, you gotta go feel comfortable. You gotta go feel comfortable. You gotta get whatever you got that's causing problems. Because again, I'm sorry where a couple got into it. The gentleman went into the lady when they got her father. The father came back and he was a very, very ignorant man. And he came in with a pistol and started shooting and shot his granddaughter in the head. And so when you go and they bring that patient to you and you do something that makes her start crying and it's only to help her. They started giving her an IV and all that, and that's punishing to a kid when you stick a needle, trying to make sure you get life-saving fluid. Right. And I could just see the tears coming down my eyes. And I just started welcoming at the fact that this girl has already been hurt by some ignorant adults. And all I want to do is to make her feel comfortable. And the things I have to do to help her cause her to start crying. I just immediately burst out and said, I'm sorry. And my partner was with her, both of us were crying, grown men, we just bawled.
The message that I'm getting overall, again, I'm very sorry for that experience this so young, is that there is important in creating safe mental health spaces, creating environments where men can feel comfortable sharing. And those may oftentimes not be with your spouse or significant other or family. There are spaces traditionally that men were able to come together and share as men and feel space and feel safe. The barbershop. We've all had that experience of going to the barbershop and just letting it out.
Right.
For me, hanging out with my frat brothers, the cigar bar, we go play chess, we go shoot pool, we go to Top Golf. And in those spaces, we have the opportunity to vent. Not venting from a male perspective isn't the same thing as what I experienced from women. That's been my observation. We do things differently. Not that there's any problem with those differences, but the way we do things often is different. I don't want to burden my partner with my problems. I am uncomfortable, and I don't mean the true I mean the self. Maybe hesitant to demonstrate vulnerability with my partner, not just because I'm uncomfortable with being vulnerable, but because I might know what she's doing or he's doing. That person might be dealing with their own issues, and I don't want to add to their goals of what's on their plate. Can we talk a little bit about how
you saying, but I think that's kind of a way escaping.
This
It's
is
a real,
Yeah,
real
yeah.
thing. Because even scripturally, people who listen for Bible believers, it told us to bear ye one another's burdens. It's one of the things that you were doing, and I can see that. Bear ye one another's burdens, and we stop saying we're not our brother's keeper. A lot of things have put us in a position to negate what we really need to be doing. And you said something really adamant, is that we would desire to communicate, but we can't. It's a problem. It's like stop it.
Sure.
So, but I think as men, not only we first we're human beings before we look at potential. We're meant here, right? We're human beings, so right. So in the human family, communication is needed, but oftentimes we don't feel appreciated per se. For instance, if I tell you, if I go to my wife and I tell her about a vulnerability, she says, talk to me. And so then I tell her what my vulnerability is. We going on, and then 6 months later, she brings it up. It was a trust factor.
There you go.
Right?
There you go, yeah.
I ain't telling you nothing. I ain't
You know?
telling you nothing. You ask Jesus. Ask Jesus.
Yeah.
You get a prophecy. I'm not telling you.
Right.
Get a word.
Why don't you talk to me? Why don't you talk to me? I try
But I can't trust you with how I feel.
Right.
And so men shut down for that very reason.
Right.
I'd like to.
Yes.
Please.
So there's a sweet spot in here somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And it is that we men do really want to communicate with those significant and key people. All right. That's we want to. When you're in that really relationship,
Deep down.
you want to be able to reveal that. But here's the thing, I think. Don't take it personal when, as Officer Gilstrap, I hope I said that correctly, said that they can't handle the truth, right? We back to A Few Good Men, Jack Nicholson, right? And it's not that they can't so much handle it. The question is, do we care enough about their well-being that I don't want to take up their energy and space, right? In that moment. That's why it's so key to have those sacred spots where we can unleash, where we can do our exercise, where we can have our mental relief, where we can, what is it that energizes me, right? So I don't think, I'm not going to put it all on the family that they're just weak and unable. But I think as men, that we want to take that position of protection. I look at it more as a position of protection, that I'm going to preserve your energy and what you have, so that I can carry that as a kid.
That's a great point.
So if I can add to that, and so what I said earlier is I've learned to morph into giving you heart what I want to truly tell you. So what I mean by that is I saw a homicide today. The guy got shot multiple times. The kid was affected. The kid was hurt. The kid's on life support. Well, I'll just tell you, I had a bad day, honey. I had a bad day. I saw some guy get shot, and it was terrible. And I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And I don't tell you about the kid. I don't tell you about what happened to him. I don't tell you about he got ran over 5 or 6 times. You know, because they can't handle some of those particular things.
Was it 5 or 6 times?
6 times.
Yeah.
A little purpose.
Oh,
So
Dr. Robinson, you have your thoughts?
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that I got was that you talked about the version of himself that is left for him to survive, and I want to speak to that. A great point, which is when you start talking about vulnerability, you're actually talking about not having the wherewithal or not having the power to really feel. Because when you're talking about vulnerability, you're talking about revealing something.
Yes.
And part of revealing is taking a burden and possibly giving it to somebody that may or may not be able to have the ability to handle what you're about to give them. So in the way of our strength, we keep this because we feel like because we're men, it's better we can handle it if we can just bear the weight.
Jay, I have to bring it back there because we say we don't want to burden that person. But the same person, we don't trust that person, let's be transparent.
Right.
Because you can go to the strip joint and you'll tell her everything.
Everything, yeah.
So stay
That's
with
the
them
facts.
house.
That's the
So
fact.
it ain't about that. It ain't about that. I mean, she don't want to hear all your problems and you won't burden her at all.
Well,
So it ain't about, it's
Dr.
about the person you want to.
She getting paid to listen though.
Well, what do you think happened at the house?
Right.
Gentlemen, we'll talk about the gentlemen's club.
She's not taking
Advanced
credit
therapy
for
another day.
I said, let's fight, though. I'm sitting down, don't let it ground. Too late. I'm
No, I got you. A long time ago.
Long time ago.
That's a long time ago, yeah.
We will talk about traditional safe spaces. We are coming to the top of that hour. This is incredible.
Yeah.
We've already covered a lot, but I feel I would be remiss if I didn't talk about sort of some of the things that we can do to protect and preserve our mental health. We touched on exercise. We touched on creating safe spaces. What are other things that we might think about doing or engaging in that might stimulate us or help us protect and preserve our mental health to move us on the spectrum?
Yeah, I think each individual is going to be distinct within themselves. You have to ask the question, what is it that energizes me? For me, it's reading books. It may be going for walks. It may be working out. You know, you might really exercise, might be a really good mental relief for people, right? Some might like going to the movies. So really begin to ask the question, what is it that I do that refuels me? It gives me the energy.
Two things that I would consider great into to the exercise. There's the physical exercise, and I also believe in the mental exercise. I think the mental exercise of things like, understanding emotional intelligence, what is self-awareness, learning new vocabulary in terms of communicating. I think the mental exercise is a thing that's really key because it better helps you understand the position of where you are and how to really deal with the challenges when you have another mind frame of understanding to deal with
That's a great thought. Officer Gilstrap.
I think you should seek out ways to, depending on where you're at in life, if you've had a lot of trauma, you can seek out cognitive behavior therapy along with maybe some minor medication. I believe that giving someone a pill doesn't cure anything. You have to give that pill and give it direction. You give a prescription, they have how you take this, how often do you take it. You should do the same thing with your mental health. If you have depression, it's okay. First of all, you work out how to do it without taking medication. And then if you see that you still need medication, continue to do those things to work your mind and body in addition to the medication that you take.
Robinson.
I think that one of the things is that people should look at some environmental relationships or relationships toxic. I need to remove myself from toxic because I can't function, I can't grow. I should place myself around people who give me the ability to grow. That's another thing. And increasing your vocabulary, because they say that when you look at crime, the biggest crime statistics are with people who have low vocabulary. So that's why education is so important. More education. When you get people who have limited vocabulary, they keep repeating themselves and trying to talk. You know what I'm saying?
You understand?
So I think that being able to increase one's vocabulary and start looking at how to reinvent yourself. Who am I going to be? At 20, I cannot be the same person at 30. And when I get 30, I want to be 40 looking back at 30, saying, hey, I'm better. To reinvent yourself, to become better, learn new terminologies, and find out you can learn new terminologies and live them and walk them.
Yeah.
They walk you into a new identity of who you want to be without being fake or false. So that's some of the things.
I heard something this morning and it said that people come into your life to do wonderful things and subtract, multiply.
It's good.
And if you look at the people in your life,
Yeah.
what are they doing? Are they adding to my life? Or are they always taking something from me? Are they multiplying the things that I give them? Are they giving it back and multiplying it? Manifold. Are they dividing? Are they creating chaos? I don't like the term toxicity. I'm not a fan of it in general. I am a particularly strong critic of the term male toxicity.
Oh,
There is only toxicity. Because as you said, we're human.
Right.
All humans have potential for toxicity. So there isn't a greater scale on the male side.
Right.
There isn't a greater scale on the female side.
I agree with
It's
that.
just toxic behavior.
Just toxic.
Can we discuss that?
I have to chime in
We
on
may
that.
have to do another whole session.
Yeah.
Because masculine toxicity is a word made up.
Right.
It's a made up terminology.
Right.
They were never born together. They were never formulated together.
Yes.
Right.
It's a way to take away from the real masculinity of a man by saying if he ain't doing right, he's supposed to be a man. That's male toxicity. No, it's not. A real man is one that takes care of his business, his family. He's a protector and the toxic about a real man. So you can't say male toxic. You have to say toxic. You could say that.
I think that's fair.
But I mean, if you don't talk about how much poison I got, woman, how much you get. I mean, but you don't like what you get, you check what you pour in there.
Hey.
I mean,
That is.
Say that again.
You don't like what you don't like what you get, you ought to check see what you put out. You don't like what you get, see because people love you by the way you make them feel about themselves. You make them feel stank, they gonna give you stank.
Right.
You make them feel good, so
Yeah.
I think he brings out a brilliant point, right? The real issue is not about the other person as much as it is about you
That's right.
and evaluating yourself
That's
to
right.
see what do I need to remove in me, what characteristics am I bringing to the table that is causing some trouble, dysfunction in my own family.
Yes.
That's awareness.
That's
And I
right.
thought your question was really good, or your breakdown. Are these people that I'm with? Do they
I take
hold?
compliments.
Right.
Exactly.
All the time.
Do they add? Do they subtract? And so I would encourage every one of us to really write down those key people in your life and begin to say, does this person add to me, or does this person take away from me? And then I want you to say, let me spend more time with those people that energize me versus pull away. And then the other question is, just because that person takes away from you doesn't mean you need to discard that person. You need to then ask the question, how can we mend this? Is it possible to mend this?
There we go. That's a great question. Dr. Robinson, I can see you ready to go.
All right. You said something that was key. That's mostly the challenges with a lot of the married couples that we see. Most times when they come to the sessions, they're like, well, I'm here because I want to make sure my husband gets some help. Not even realizing that they're part of the contribution of why the marriage is not working in the first place. And so our deal is, okay, so when you come here, you know this is not about the other person, right? You know it's about you. Well, why is that? Because if you are both in the marriage together, do you know that your issues were not collected until each of you brought something together?
So we came together.
Bingo.
There it is.
I'll see those right. Be careful, she might be.
I was just saying, I mean, you said it all. It's like each person is bringing their set of differences to the table. But if you don't understand what's negative and what's harmful that you're bringing, you can't help. You're just there and you blame the other person for something you do. Right? And so I think that's key. I really do. And speechless. That was good. That's probably also thing.
So emotional intelligence,
Yes.
self-awareness,
Yes.
accountability.
Yes.
So if we had to
Is that
define
idea?
emotional intelligence, self-awareness, and accountability. I think if I had to condense what you gentlemen have said down to like a trinity, like I cook, so
Okay.
in classic cooking, celery, onions, carrots, start with soup. That's the trinity.
We now.
We're talking about the gumbo races. You look at it, start to the we're condensing it down for the self.
Right.
If you're able to focus on those three things, at a minimum, you can begin to understand more intelligently how to respond to others. Do the work in yourself. And I think that's really a key to men's mental health. First, understand we're all a working process. And we all have this deep capacity to do these things independent of someone else. It's not about her or him or them. It starts with self.
And along with self is responsibility. right? So in between stimulus and response, there's space, but what's in that space is choice, right? We have the
Say that
ability
again.
to
Say that
respond
again.
between stimulus and response. There's choice. Somebody cuts me off, and what happened? They cut me off. That's why I gave them finger. That's why I cussed them out. You know, in between stimulus and response, that space is choice. I must take full ownership. When we take full ownership of our life, then we don't play the victim. We become the victor. We now become the locus of control, and we stop putting the power outside of ourselves.
I think that's lost.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It's like-
Empowerment.
Because you hear about all the
Accountability is empowered.
reckless driving, people get upset, the shooting. We don't give people in society an outlet to get help. We bash them, we cause harm, and then we wonder why they do what they're doing. It's just like, we don't want to change, another topic too, but these mass shootings, people see things and they're going to copycat things. That whole system is broken because it keeps continuing to happen on a regular basis.
Right.
You either take the guns away or you require people to have counseling in school, or home, or part of insurance or something, where these people can get this information out, whether they're racist, they're homophobic, they're all those different things. And you expect people to heal themselves, and they can't. Some people can't. They need to be counseled. They need to be educated on things. Because, and I say this, I can't help how I'm born, when I'm born, and who I am. And you're telling me, if you're coming at me and saying, I don't like you because you're black, well, this is what I was born. I don't hate you because you're white or you're Hispanic or whatever. So if you get to the root of it, that stuff is taught by somebody who learned it from their parents, and it's taught. Because if we all as a group sit down together and we're raised that way, we would hate each other.
That's exactly.
I may not like you because your personality sucks. But I don't dislike you because you're
I'm
black.
with that, yeah.
But we do like you.
Yeah. You just get on my nerves sometimes, yeah.
And so I don't dislike anybody because of the color. I just like, and I have issues with people who have issues with me or they're just mean people. You know what I mean? Because it's more as it is.
Is that a clinical term? Because I run into people that are just assholes occasionally. Now that's not.
Can we say that?
We can, yeah, we can. We can. As we said, it's safe.
They're just not nice. And
They're
you
not
run
nice.
into those people, and I don't have a problem.
It's
Oh, they're just not a nice
Or
person.
they're entitled.
But
There are lots of subcategories. And I'll just go, oh, they're not nice. I don't know. They keep puppies on the weekend, or they don't open doors. They just somewhere along the way, they didn't learn to be nice. And I think there's such a thing in terms of personal responsibility. My inner version of myself is a pretty nice guy. Because I have pretty nice parents. I have a pretty nice wife. And my kids are pretty, I heard that. And I have a pretty nice kid. I have pretty nice friends. And I strive to be a part of a community of people that are generally being good to me. And if you see yourself within that space as part of a community, it's generally trying to be good to one another.
yeah, that kind of community involved helps you raise a community. Just like it's the opposite of you. Witnesses would function as so much mental health in terms of negative. We're functioning in that. Since we function there, then it tends to be with our media and everything, it tends to be the thing that's going on. So everybody, it's okay to not open doors anymore. That was the sign that people don't even go by and speak. You say, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Remember they had a company called Brooks years ago. You can walk in Brooks and say, come on in. You can walk in the store now, out, so they say, get on out. You know, it's a whole other genre in terms of how we deal with each other on this planet, which tells me that our mental health has receded greatly farther than we know. It's just like when we see somebody come out, they're not wearing anything but some dental floss. Somebody said, no, that's weird. Somebody said, oh my goodness. And somebody said, I can't believe they did it. Somebody said, well, each his own. If that person does that for about 30 to 45 days, the opinion of that will change. Someone will say, well, it's not so bad. Another will say, yeah, people do what they want to do. And then another person say, can I get some of that dental floss? So we're brought into that, by the way we what we see every day. These kids are not being talked down, these mass shootings. They should be
Right.
talked down. Nobody's talking them down.
Right.
So what happens is they move into society where you can't leave kids watching TV by themselves. Even cartoons, you gotta go back to playing with the kid to watch. Or sit there and watch it with them. So how about a child was in a shooting? And nobody talks them down. What do they think about shootings? There's a percentile that person can go along, even if it's okay, shoot people, you get mad, that's all.
This might be a good point to take a little bit of a break. We're going to pivot to a short break. Thank you for those who joined us and continue running online. This is a point where you should definitely put your questions in the chat. We're going to have a brief discussion on resources. Then we're going to go to questions before we close out. So hang on and return to us after this break. Phi Beta Sigma Fraternity Incorporated, and our panelists in our men's mental health panel discussion for Mental Health Awareness Month. I have with me to my left, Dr. Guy Earl, Dr. Jay Robinson, Officer Jarrod Gilstrap from Dallas Fire, and Dr. Carl Robinson, the Director and CEO of Dallas LifeSkills Center, here for a panel discussion on mental health. We're returning from a brief break, and in this moment, we're going to begin talking about resources for dealing with mental health. This segment is exclusively focused on what tools can we provide families. Officer Gilstrap, you shared the RIGHT program as one of the tools that Dallas uses to deal with folks dealing with mental health crisis. Are there any resources that Dallas Fire offers to families or to folks in crisis? Or where would you direct folks to go if they were looking for information on how to address these issues?
So what I would suggest is, if you have a family member that's in crisis and they need emergency services, call 911 and the Right Care team will come out. So the Right Care team consists of a Dallas police officer, a Dallas firefighter, and a Parkland social worker. And that team comes together to answer 911 calls real time, and we'll go out and we'll assess the patient that's in question to see if we can provide them services. What we basically do is we link them up with Dallas Behavioral, Parkland Mental Health Services, and just other psych facilities that we have around the city of Dallas. MetroCare is the state-funded service for Dallas County, where you can get, if you don't have any money, you can fill out an OSER screen, and then you can receive services there. So we kind of link all that together with our Right Care program. And then we also have an overdose response team. So basically with that team, we go out if a person has an overdose from fentanyl, which is very prevalent today. We'll go out and we'll assess that patient and we'll try to provide the services as well. And we also talk to ways to get Narcan. You can go to morenarcanplease.com and to see if you can receive it. And the state also took away the prescription waiver for Narcan. So you can go to any pharmacy within the city of Dallas or within the state and you can get Narcan without having a prescription.
Dr. Robinson.
I'm going to say go to where he is. We don't have that big of a go-to for people who are already dealing with it, so that we can go-to for people that live in Dallas and area.
No, but if it's a non-crisis situation, let's say the family is dealing with mental health issues, but not a crisis per se.
Let's talk about, I would talk about, the narrative for me would be behavioral health. Because just because someone carries out, kicks a window, and throws a cell phone and breaks it doesn't mean they have a problem. So you have a big difference between what's mental health and what's behavioral health. Enough bad behavior health will take you into bad mental health if you continue to do it because your mind consistently works. You have something called your psychology and your sociology. Your psychology is everything that works on the inside of your head. Your sociology is everything that works on the outside of your mind. And psychology is psyche and your sock. So if your sock gets screwed up, it's going to screw your psyche up. If the psyche gets screwed up, it's going to mess your socks up. So, what we do is more behavioral. When people have anger problems and they can't cope and they don't have coping mechanisms, we come in and kind of prevent anything. And we will refer out to an agency for that type of mental health. Right now, we do cognitive group training that will prevent it because behavioral health is a $115 billion broken wheel in its delivery system across this nation.
If they wanted more information on the services that you provide, where would you send them?
GreaterDallasLifeSkills.com. That's place.
Can you say that again?
GreaterDallasLifeSkills.com. And you won't always get me, but you'll get somebody that look like me or somebody that's trained by me. And you can get in the class. If you are arguing all the time, eventually you can end up doing something that you shouldn't. But when you get angry, you lose up to 80% of your intelligence. That's why you take a $400, $500, $700 cell phone and stand up against the wall because you wasn't all there. But when it hit the wall, you realize you don't have insurance. What do you do?
Dr. Earl, if you were the kind of family member that was dealing with a mental health issue or crisis, where would you send them?
So there are a lot of different resources out there. As relates to addiction, a user-friendly resource is the Men of Nehemiah. It's an addiction treatment center. There is the Denton Freedom House. A lot of times, I'm kind of emphasizing on men who might be transitioning. There is a Denton Freedom House, which will house somebody up to about 6 months, which can be really beneficial for somebody trying to get on their feet. There's always the 988 hotline if you have any thoughts of suicide and harming yourself. It's a 24-hour assess to talk with somebody. And then I have a podcast called Happy Hour, The Other Side of Depression, which basically we all want happiness, right? The reason I even named it is because I was asked to speak on depression. And what I realized is that anxiety and depression are at the heart of most people's issues. So I don't really talk about anxiety and depression. I talk about what does happiness look like. And really what happiness looks like is healthy relationships.
Yes.
At the core, it's all about having healthy relationships. I also have a resource called, and I'm pushing my resources,
Please do.
but what I am doing, Doc, is I do believe that most of us are not aware of where the root issues come from.
Right.
So I wrote a book years ago called Transform Through His Thoughts, How to Achieve Change by Replacing Negative Thoughts with God's Thoughts, because most of us,
say that title again for those that might be trying to think out.
transform through His thoughts, how to achieve change by replacing negative thoughts with God's thoughts. And it's also the workbook, because you have to, and I have to become aware of where these roots are coming from, right? Once we are aware of it, then we can do something about it. And if interested, I created transformation schema therapy, because again, change, we're stuck in a rut. And once you have been programmed, you just don't turn off those programming. To turn off the programming, you have to have serious psychological intervention. And I don't think every process is able to do that.
No. So for more information on T-Schema program, where would you direct them to?
tschema.com.
Can you spell that for the?
tschema.com.
For more information. Dr. Robbins.
I'm gonna piggyback off of,
What was that website again?
that's GreaterDallasLifeSkills.com.
I'm not gonna give you the telephone. Is there a telephone number where they can?
Yes, there's a telephone number. It is 214-448-3763. And all you have to do is speak with one of the people that is there. And the reception is great. They can be trained by us. They can pretty much direct you to any program or any type of service that you're looking for. We do anger management, relationship stress management, domestic violence, parenting, thinking for change. We do the whole domestic violence deaths. We do the whole spectrum in terms of being able to look at, as you would say, transformational thinking.
And I would be remiss if before we end this section on resources that I didn't emphasize the National Institute of Health. Its website has a National Institute for Mental Health that has incredible resources. If you're looking for more information on topics dealing with mental health, we mentioned 988 as a resource for those that are dealing with suicide. I'm a big fan of the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. Please take this number down if you don't need it. Have it in your phone because you never know who you might need it. That's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255. If you know someone that might need that information, you go ahead and put that into your phone. You never know who you might need that information. Please.
So there is a large church in Dallas, Oak Cliff Bible Fellowship, which I actually had the opportunity to work with. And we have free, for the most part, free support groups that deal with anxiety, depression, kingdom marriage, destructive thoughts, divorce care, grief support, abortion laws, chemical addictions, etc. So there's a lot of information out there for people who really need it.
And your local VA provides resources for veterans. So if you know of a veteran in crisis, please contact your local Department of Veterans Affairs for additional resources. There are an abundance of resources. As we move to wrap up, I'd like to thank the president of our chapter, Frankie Lloyd, Vice President Eric Hill, the head of our Social Action Committee, Chase Jackson, and my fellow panelists, Antonia Altman and Leonard Nathan for their contributions, George Dorsey for his support and assistance, Damon Sales for his timely support and assistance this morning, and my own family, and George Boston as well. All of these gentlemen have been critical to bringing this event to fruition. I'd like to thank my lovely wife who assisted me developing the flyer, and my son, Kinsali Smith, for providing his support. Do we have any questions from the audience? Sure, young man. How can what can I do? Please speak up.
Do you think that in particular, young men can create a better lifestyle for themselves using techniques like physical well-being or like better eating habits, exercise, and grooming, or is it more of a mindset that you develop over time?
That's a good question.
So my dad is a holistic doctor, and he always tells me, he says, the gut is the second brain, right? So we're talking about mental health and the importance of controlling our thought process and really being aware of the things that's coming at us. But just as important as what we think is also what we eat, what we put into our bodies, because of the mind-body connection. You cannot separate the two. Trauma is housed in the body. And so to kind of piggyback, we need to deal with those traumas, right? Sometimes we bury those traumas and think, okay, that was 20 years ago. I don't have to worry about that. But that trauma is like a ghost. It will come back. So yes, great question. It is all connected. What we eat, our physical action, all of that affects the person.
Dr. Robinson.
Oh, that's a great question. I love the response there. I look at two things. You hit these two words very often. You hit the word mentality and mindset. Change your mentality, change your mindset. And I think there should be two terminologies that I think are more powerful than those two. One, which is outlook, the other is outcome. If you work on improving your outlook, you're going to have a better outcome. So part of our challenge is that when we're looking at things that's going on with us mentally, we never consider the physical detriment that such experiences have on us. So to begin to really deal with what's going on mentally, we always go through and make sure our appetites are not affected, that we're not overindulging, that we're considering moderation, that we have a regimen, because part of our downfall is not really having a regimen in place. Been working through things such as physical fitness, not just going to the gym, but actually finding pockets of the day to actually be physically available and active, moving around, not sitting still, not complacent, because it's the moment that then your mind is idle. So you have those things to consider. That's my take on it.
Officer Gilstrap.
Two doctors said it best. I mean, they pretty much covered the gamut of how your mind and body are one. So if you take care of your body as well as what you eat, the fuel you use, then your mind will be healthier as well. And also, just one last plug for Metro, which is a state-funded services for dialysis in the state. It's 214-743-1215. I'll repeat that again. 214-743-1215.
Dr. Robinson, your thoughts?
I believe from listening to the question was twofold, and I believe the question was, which way do I develop? Do I develop in my mind or in my body? I'd like to offer this narrative, is that they say when a baby born, head first, right? So head first, we would think, but then you talk about the soul of a man and the spirit of a man. But I believe there's terminology, Greek terminology in our brains. It may be called pistis, which means the belief of a man. So if you want to become the best person you can be living in what you're designed to be, you need to check and find out what you first believe. Socrates, Plato, Aristophanes, all these people had belief systems that took them where they needed to go. And it helped them develop mentally and to develop physically. And so sometimes people will develop mentally before they get themselves together physically, because there's stressors and things that are out there, and there's diet, and there's McDonald's. Yeah, feel me? So my advice to you is to look into your belief system. What do I believe? That's the strongest thing. When the fighter get ready to fight, first thing they do, they grab them, they say, who you love? But you believe this, you can believe it. The ones that get knocked out, the ones that go out there chewing gum, think they can't get knocked out, right? So my thing is, look into your belief system. What do I believe? Do I believe in treating people fairly? Do I believe in honor? People in jail right now because of somebody they dishonored. Honor is key. We can't hold people accountable. We hear this, hold us accountable. God's the only one hold us accountable. Y'all got accountability accounts for me. You can close that one. I don't need you to have no accountability for me.
Right.
Because you ain't responsible for me. If I had to be accountable to you, that makes you responsible for me.
Right.
And that's why I left my house for my mom. I had one mom. I don't need two.
Right.
Can I piggyback off
Yes,
this?
you can.
I mean, you know, the wisest man who ever lived walked the earth said, as a man thinketh, so is he. See, you know, we talk about destigmatized. We'll go to the eye doctor, we'll go to the heart doctor,
That's right.
we'll go to the foot doctor,
Right.
the hip doctor, we get all that stuff worked on, but we don't address the mind, right? But as a man thinketh, so is he. Thoughts become reality, and when you can change your mind, yeah.
So I have a question from the gallery, gentlemen. With us being in 2023, the idea often is to discuss what men hadn't been doing to address mental health 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. The answer to addressing is obviously communication. Can you gentlemen discuss or put a bow on the progress in itself or of basic communication with men in opening up and discussing their issues, not just at the barbershop or the cigar lounge, but just in more open positions and open opportunities?
That's fantastic. Would like to go first? I think the country has noticed that we've done a poor job of addressing mental health. More closely related here in Dallas, I think the department has also seen that. Because we've had, in our department, we've had a multitude of people who try to take their lives. So internally, we put out a CARES program that addresses our mind here with the fire department. And in the city, we've done a really good job, and I'm part of that, of addressing mental health with our right care team and with programs that we're putting out where we go out and address mental health. We've worked in collaboration with our a couple of state services. I just had a little breakdown. Metro Care, and a lot of the Dallas Behavioral, Green Oaks, Southern Area Behavior, and other facilities throughout the city. Where when you call us, we work with them and we try to get you services with those particular people in order to better yourself. So I think we're trying. I know we're behind the 8 ball, but we're trying to play catch up because you see that's a big problem, and that's why you have so many things that are going bad in society right now, with shootings, stabbings, lack of respect, and all that's attributed to your mental health.
What did he say?
So I want to make sure I understand the question. I don't want to extend too much time, but when you talk about communication, again, in a nutshell, what are you asking?
So the question submitted, from my knowledge, from what is going on, is as men, we've had this discussion about we need to open up more, and compared to where we are now, from where we were back then, it is a lot better. But what exactly do we need to do to enhance that even more? That's the question that I received.
Okay, and with 2 things. Number one, we talk about support groups here quite a bit. I think it takes someone being able to be vocal to say you need to get some help. I think to stand back and just look for the proactive measure to step out and say, I need help and I don't want any help. But obviously I'm struggling and you see me and I'm struggling. Somebody should say, hey, man, let me see if I can't go get you some help. So I think the first part is to actually be vocal. And again, I think if the person is specifically talking or speaking in reference to Black men, I think it is important that we look to say, I see where you're struggling, but let me see if I can get you some help. So I think we don't extend ourselves enough amongst each other to provide the resources, much less the help and the encouragement to try to get help. So it's like people who are essentially by themselves trying to look for help or don't know help is out there. And even attesting to a lot of the time people come to us and say, I didn't even know that you guys even existed. I'm like, we're on the web, we did this with them. Like, no, I didn't know you guys existed. So I think the conversation now at this point should be, if we see somebody that needs help, then we should be able to point and direct them with no shame, no question, no guilt, no feeling bad, no anything. It should be, let's get you some help.
And I would say, be intentional about your mental health, right? Seek and ye shall find. Knock and the door shall be open.
Right.
If you're really interested in finding something out, you'll find it, right? And I think the key to that is become humble. I think that, and I'm not talking to anybody except myself, because we can have egos.
Right.
I heard one person say, ego stands for edging God out. And I will say this, when you become weak, you instantly become strong. Because if you're weak at a point, you tap on God's shoulder and he takes control, and that's the name of the game for all of our success.
Right.
I think we're at a great point to go ahead and close out. I know we can talk about longer, but I promise you, gentlemen, I wasn't go longer than an hour and a half, and I think we've reached that mark. I'd like to thank, again, all the participants in today's panel, Dr. Guy Earl, Jay Robinson, Officer Gilstrap, and Dr. Carl Robinson for their participation. Can we bring out our small tokens of esteem for distinguished panelists? Please. The fraternity would just like to say thank you for your participation.
Wow, this is just, wow.
Just a small token of our esteem.
Wow.
And again, just a way of saying thank you for your contributions. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your efforts. Thank you for the role that you played in our community. We sincerely appreciate you. Thank you to our audience and those who joined us online. And we look forward to continuing this conversation in the future. Lord bless you and have a safe day.
Thank you so much.